What's up, Magic players? It's Doyle, your host here on DoylePrimeMtG, where I bring you the latest and greatest in Magic content that I can, while still trying to have a life. This weekend, I have the pleasure of marrying the woman of my dreams. So I wanted to save a special commander for this week, Olivia, Crimson Bride.
Forests, islands, mountains, plains, and swamps. The multiverse is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. There is a tingling in the spine, a faint sensation, as if a distant memory, of walking from plane to plane. Our lives have been forever changed, as if by magic. Embark with me on this journey to eternity. Experience the true power of mind over matter as we ignite your spark and traverse into the magic multiverse.
Olivia Crimson Bride costs 4 black-red for a 3/4 legendary vampire with flying and haste, and whenever Olivia Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains, when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. This commander is akin to an old favorite, Kalia of the Vast, though in this case we will attempt to rummage our reanimator targets into the graveyard to allow us to utilize Olivia's haste ability to guarantee even more value. I have included a few legendary vampires to help protect the reanimated creatures, but we will focus mostly on value reanimator for this build. Using some magical rocks, we will turn out our game plan as quickly as possible. Soul Ring, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Arcane Signet are the staples that we know and love. Felwar Stone, Rakdos Signet, and Talisman of Indulgence will each ramp us as early as turn 2 while fixing our colors. Fractured Power Stone, Ebony Fly, and Worn Power Stone will add to the bulk of our mana production so that we don't have to worry about falling behind. Millikin will generate colorless mana while milling reanimation targets into our graveyard. Soldevi Edney will allow us to sacrifice a black or artifact creature to add black mana equal to its mana value. When cheating mana cost, this is quite a powerful ability. Neheb the Eternal and Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, the mono-red versions, will each help us generate red mana for use during our second main phase, while one of them's even going to let us wheel part of our hand. We can also generate incidental mana through discard with Surly Badgersaur and Bone Miser, generating treasures or black mana respectively. Next up, we gotta fill our hand while sorting what we want to reanimate into our graveyard. In this build, discard will be almost as important as draw. We will rummage through our deck with Cathartic Reunion, Thrill of Possibility, Tormenting Voice, Wild Guess, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, and Valakut Awakening. Dragon Mage, Ruin Grinder, and Magus of the Wheel, and even Wheel of Misfortune, allow us to refill an empty hand for just a little bit of effort. Knight's Whisper will allow us to draw a couple cards and lose a couple life. Vampiric Rites can let us trade a creature for the same. Azra Oddsmaker can let us bet on a creature to deal combat damage. We'll discard a card for the opportunity to draw 2. Florian Voldarian Scion can let us choose the best of many cards off the top of our library each turn. Stitcher Supplier will mill us 3 cards when it enters play or dies, essentially drawing us cards into our grave for reanimation. Disciple of Bolas will allow us to sacrifice a creature to draw cards equal to its power. Falconwrath Pitfighter will allow us to pay 2 mana and discard a card to draw 2. Anji Maid of Dishonor will allow us to rummage with the use of blood tokens. Anjay Falconwrath will allow us to rummage on a tap ability. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, will let us snag something juicy off the top of an opponent's library. Rankle, Master of Pranks, will draw us a card on combat damage, not to mention giving us the option to sacrifice a creature and or discard a card. Speaking of sacrifice, Calling Deus will allow us to keep our card advantage at the ready, while letting us ditch any of our creatures into the bin at instant speed. Yawgmoth Thran Physician will draw us a card through sacrificing a creature. A new toy that I like for this deck is Curse of Obsession. This really plays into the strategy well. We can curse ourselves. Yes, this is actually better to be used on ourselves here. We will not only draw 3 cards per turn, but we can pitch anything and everything into our bin for reanimation at the end of our turn. Finally, God Eternal Bantu is one of my favorite draw engines for Reanimator and Aristocrats decks, letting us sacrifice a large amount of permanents to draw that many cards. It also dodges the exile clause and gets put back into our library instead. Next up, the control aspect of this strategy is important, as the card flow is a bit unique. We will include the other 2 iterations of Olivia here as well, mostly to have an outlet to turn other legendary creatures into vampires permanently, or at least until they leave play. This means that we can control a legendary vampire without technically controlling a legendary vampire. This will help us deter spot removal by having multiple legendary vamps. Entomb and Buried Alive will allow us to set our grave up for the perfect play by tutoring a number of cards into our graveyard. Kaladas, Trader of Get, will exile our opponent's dying creatures and give us zombie tokens for each one. Carter Doomscourge can ETB to goad each creature that we don't control. Anawan the Ruin Sage will force each player to sacrifice a non-vampire at their upkeep. Often, this is exactly the amount of sacrifice that we need. Draena Calastria Bloodchief will let us spot remove creatures with our unspent extra mana. And Shaku Endbringer can just tap and exile a creature. Massacre Girl, Balefire Dragon, Rakdos the Defiler, and Archfiend of Ilfnir will surely cause some level of wipe each time they hit play. We can also use Tower the Magistrate to add a shade of protection. So since we want to be sure that our creatures don't get exiled, we will include plenty of sacrifice outlets. High Market, Carrion Feeder, Viscera Seer, Woe Strider, Altar of Dementia, Spawning Pit, Goblin Bombardment, and Yeheni Undying Partisan, in addition to the others previously mentioned. We will also each allow us to sacrifice our creatures at will, letting us choose Grave over Exile. While Olivia grabs free creatures from our graveyard, Stefan, Morar Progenitor, and Sneak Attack will let us cheat our creatures in from our hand. For closing out the game, we have Combat Damage. This deck consistently just puts big creatures from the graveyard with big ETB effects, and each of which are going to have additional utility beyond that combat damage. Our Reanimator targets will continue to control the board, while helping us beat down our foes with combat damage. We're actually going to move on to the lands here. For the rest of our lands, we will focus on color fixing. We will include Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Path of Ancestry, Dragon Skull Summit, Foreboding Ruins, Graven Cairns, Haunted Ridge, Luxury Suite, Smoldering Marsh, Sulphurous Springs, and Tainted Peak, leaving us room for 10 swamps and 7 mountains. That about wraps it up for this deck tech. I hope you enjoyed the video. You'll find the link to the full deck list on architect.com in the description, complete with a maybe board. Let me know in the comments below if you would take this deck in a different direction, or if there are any key includes that I missed. Cheers, and happy casting. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button, and also share it with your friends. If you want to see more videos like these, or hear me ramble about how to navigate this magic multiverse, go ahead and click that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest from me, DoylePrime, and the happenings throughout Magic the Gathering. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you all next video.